Hi, I'm Mike Conlon, your host of the Weiser Books Radio Hour. Today's guest is Amy Blachthorn, proprietor of Blackthorn's Hoodoo Blends and author of Blackthorn's Botanical Magic and most recently, Blackthorn's Botanical Brews. Amy, it's great to have you on the show again. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's see, you've got the Hoodoo Blends website, and you've been doing this for, it seems like forever. How did you get involved with Weiser, and how did specifically Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, your new book, come into being?
So I've been the proprietor of. We changed the name to Blackthorne's Botanicals back in August, and my journey with Weiser actually started due to my I had a visit with Judica, my now fabulous editor, in December of 2015. I had a really fantastic wild hair idea. I was on Twitter and Judica was talking about she was going to visit a shop that used to be in the Bronx, owned by Lady Rhea, her candle shop right in the Bronx. She was going to do a class on the witches of Yule. So I called my dear friend Natalie Zanin, and we decided we were going to carpool up to the Bronx and go and visit Judica and check out this shop. So I drove 2 hours to her. She drove 2 hours to the Bronx. So we had this fabulous adventure during which it was the intermission period. Keep in mind, this was supposed to be a 2 hour class. So at around 2.5 hours, we decided to have an intermission. Oh, it's such a great place. You walk in and Lady Rhea hands you a glass of Prosecco and tells you to make yourself at home. And it's just a beautiful, homey feel to it. So everyone's sitting on fabulous chairs and enjoying each other's company, back when we could do those kinds of things. And during intermission, I was chatting with Judica and Natalie about everybody's projects and where we are. And Judica said, "Amy, why aren't you writing for Weiser?" And I said, "You know what? Yes, I don't have a good reason. I have no idea." So I elevator pitched her 5 different books, and she picked one and said, "Send me that in a proposal." And a year later, I did. It took me a year to deal with my own nerves and my own anxieties, and said, "Okay, I really need to do this. This is where my life has led up to this point." I mean, I wanted a book with my name on it since before I could write my own name.
Sure.
So it was really meant to be. And Blackthorne's Botanical Brews came out of this desire to, when you're going through the bookstores and you're looking at the books that are available, you always sort of see where there's something missing, where you feel you can see yourself in among the things that are not really there. So you have to figure out where those holes are. And owning Blackthorne's Botanicals, I really loved the idea of having people make their morning ritual into a ritual, to cleanse themselves, to really imbue and embody the things that they want to bring to their day. And I think that, when you're making your morning coffee or making your morning tea, that's time that could be really used and useful for ritual itself. So I really loved the idea of empowering people to create the change they wanted to see in their own worlds through their morning ritual. So I created those. I started with 15 teas that were all based on individual hoodoo blends and hoodoo recipes. But after 7 years, I mean, I'm up to 85 new teas now. I have over 300 items on the website. And so, though I kept my original core group, it's really expanded past that. And I wanted to make sure that the name reflected that. I had gotten some feedback from people in the community said, "Look, these individual things are over here, but not everything is hoodoo anymore." So I really expanded past that, the older name. And of course I keep the website because that's how people are able to find me. But I wasn't able to change the name of the website after 7 years. The shopping cart just wasn't going to update. So I'm thrilled to have all my original guests, as well as the company that I keep now, the customers that have found me over the years through my books, are especially welcome in my little realm. And everybody's got their quarantine hobbies that I had been working on this line of spell candles for a year and a half, and I finally said, okay, well, I've got the time now that I'm not on tour all the time. So I really sat down and made those come to reality, come to fruition. So I've got 9 spell candles on the site right now. They have matching teas with them. So your ancestor support tea has an ancestor support candle, and it really is a complete ritual.
Oh, fantastic. So, the original book that you wrote for us was Blackthorn's Botanical Magic, and now this is Blackthorn's Botanical Brews. What's the difference between them? Are people going to find new information in the new book? It's a great new format. Love the little hardcover here.
Oh, I love that. Everyone, especially the texture of the hardcover. It's so
good.
fantastic.
That's my mistake. The physicality of the book. When I'm not doing this stuff, I'm the production manager here. I do print production, and what is it? The rough texture on this one is super nice. So,
everyone's like, oh, it doesn't have a dust jacket like it is the texture is just perfect.
Yeah, it's called gritty film lamb. So
I love it.
Lamination, and it does give it a nice feel. So
the first book was Blackthorne's Botanical Magic. It talked about the large portion of it was the magic of essential oils. So we talked about the individual botanical, your lemons, your vetiver, your lemon balm, as essential oils being the sort of the basis for that. It really lent itself to understanding the botanicals as a whole, but the brews aspect really lent itself well to. It's a potions book. It tells people how to increase their wealth, their prosperity, their protection within their own sphere through potables, through making your own magical teas and designing your own magical teas, creating magical cocktails or mocktails. It was really important to me as the child of alcoholic parents to make sure that everything had a sober substitution, so that everything that was alcohol based had something there for someone, whether it's for sobriety reasons, you're pregnant, you're on medication, doesn't really matter why you choose not to. It's nobody's business, actually. But that you had the opportunity to make sure that those botanicals, you can see that they still have impact in our lives. So whether you're using cornmeal or you're using apples instead of cider, everybody's got their own way of moving forward. It's the materials that are magical, and it's the magic that you bring to it, not necessarily the container in which it finds itself.
I got to tell you, one of the things that really appealed to me, I will come out and say that I am an alcoholic in recovery, and one of the things that I really appreciated was the fact that there were alternatives, I'll speak for myself only, but I'm sure there's other people out there who appreciate that. So, segueing into this, did you discover a new favorite liquor to drink while writing the
I always really loved, oh my goodness, one of the local shops in our area, the owner of the shop is very vocal about her journey in recovery. So she was like, I was worried whether or not she was going to feel comfortable in selling the book. And so she had said the same, that she was very happy that there were sober substitutions available for anyone in recovery. So she was thrilled and has decided to carry it because of that. And I've always had a one drink limit because of that family history. So I was like, okay, how am I going to write this in a way that I can honor my own energy? And I found something by talking with someone in my local store. Uncle Val's Botanical Gin. It was something that was fruity and herbal, and it said a lot about who I am as a person in the way that I connect with herbs. It was based on his own garden, and so there's lemon and there's sage and there's lavender. So it has those very botanical things. I thought I didn't like gin. It turns out I don't like battery acid. So it's been featuring in a lot of the Instagram videos that I feature gin with, because it's delightful.
So I know gin is generally a juniper-based liquor. Does it still have that base to it, or is it more other botanicals?
It has the juniper in it, so it has the magical equivalent. It has that magical energy of gin, but it doesn't have. It's not juniper forward. It's actually a cucumber forward gin.
Wow.
Yeah, so you get the
right.
cucumber, and it's juicy and it's sweet, and it goes with the sage and lavender and lemon. So it's very cucumber forward.
Great. So you mentioned before you dropped a couple of references to where we're at right now, which is basically in quarantine during a pandemic. How has the pandemic kind of changed the way that you're going to tour this new book? I know that you mentioned that you had been touring books in the past, and I'm curious how this is going to affect that. How are you going to deal with that?
It's so neat that I can, with the magic of the internet, I can be in two places almost simultaneously. I can talk to someone in Tennessee, and I can debut those books at local stores in Tennessee without having to drive there, without having to fly there. So today I could be in Tennessee, and tomorrow I could be in California, and it's actually really opened up itself to virtual book signings where I can partner with the individual store. I can send them signed book plates that have the individual messages I would write at an in-person signing, and people could still get their questions asked and share their stories. But I can be in, like I said, I could be in California tomorrow. I could be in Tennessee the day after that, and I don't have to fly. I don't have to have those transportation costs, which make it a lot easier for smaller independent bookstores who might not necessarily be able to afford to send me to their store.
So I mean, that works on their end, and obviously it definitely works on our end where you can reach more people, kind of a broader audience for less expensive. So to that end, how do you find readers and fans being receptive to kind of this new reality where instead of seeing you in person, instead of kind of having them show up with a book that you would sign in person, how are they reacting to kind of this new reality?
I've gotten a lot more interaction with individuals that I may would have gotten at an in-person signing. They know they get, a minute or two to share their story and get their book signed. But this way I've started doing videos on Instagram Live featuring cocktails, or I have an entire video of just the things that you can do with lemon balm. We made a salad vinegar. We made a tincture for sedation. We use the properties of lemon balm itself. So they're getting the opportunity to interact on a more personal level, because even if they're 15 minutes in a video, they can share their stories, they can respond to my inbox, and I try and make sure that I get to each one of those, as quickly as possible, so they get the one-on-one attention that they wouldn't have gotten in a larger signing. So people are really connecting with that heart-to-heart connection that you can get, getting to chat with somebody whose work you really enjoy. And the book itself, people are seeing that it's full of projects that you can do at home already. The first thing I did before we went on lockdown in March, when I was grabbing my essentials in the grocery store, was I grabbed a bowl of pre-cut watermelon. It's $5 or so. And I grabbed a bottle of this really beautiful vinegar, and I made a watermelon shrub. I made a watermelon drinking vinegar so I could have watermelon sodas. When you're on when I wanted to understand and have something just special for me during that lockdown period, I thought, okay, that special thing could be a watermelon soda. It's not something that you'd find on the grocery store shelf. It's not something that you'd have on a regular basis. So it takes you out of your daily experience. So I have that beautiful vinegar, and I can add it to other things, and those sodas don't lend themselves to understand. It doesn't get boring because it's always something different. I've got a peach soda, I've got a watermelon soda, I've got all these different things, because I don't really do the Coke, Pepsi, Sprite thing. I can control the amount of sugar that's in my soda. It's never going to sit there and get flat because I make it on the spot.
Right. I think even before I read your book and started getting into kind of some of those particulars and the recipes that you advocate there, gotten into making I wouldn't even call it a mocktail. It was more of a spritzer, just some seltzer with fresh lime squeezed into it,
Oh,
a little bit of maple syrup to sweeten it up. And
ooh.
super good, super good.
I love being able to have the combinations change. If I'm using maple sugar, or I'm using white sugar, or if I'm using flavored honey, like each one has their own texture and their own variety that they add to the shrub.
Yeah, yeah. And then just every now and then a pinch of cayenne will just give it a little bit of zip.
Ooh.
So, you've got your business. You do the tea blends, the candles. You just said that kind of the whole pandemic thing has enabled you to focus some time on the name change and kind of pairing up. You mentioned candles and teas. What other creative avenues or hobbies have you explored during these troubling times?
It's really gotten to the point where I'm giving myself permission to do so many other things. Like I wake up and I work pretty much until I fall down and sleep at night. So it's great to have little things that you can do to really explore and expand that. So the magical blends that I created for Blackthorne's Botanical Magic, when I moved on to the next project, it was like, okay, I've got to do this other thing now. But it's given me the opportunity to go back and see which ones really resonated and needed to be expanded into their own individual product. So I've started adding some of the oil blends from the book. If people don't have the time and the resources available to create these blends in their own home, they can purchase them from the website. One of the things that I talk about on podcasts and a lot of the interviews that I do is the idea of a magical pen. You have the idea of a 10 milliliter roll-on bottle, and they're really easy to get a hold of. You can find them in your general grocery stores that carry things like essential oils. You can find them from individual shops. And there's one that I partake with. It's gotoilsupplies.com. They actually carry gemstone rollers. So instead of putting a small chip of gemstone into the bottle and you losing some of the volume of it, the roller itself is actually made from a gemstone. So those are really neat little things you can utilize. You just put a drop of whatever essential oil that you're using and fill it the rest of the way with your carrier oil, like a jojoba. And then you have something you can draw on candles with, you can anoint windows, you can protect your home with, and it's readily available. And just like that roller ball acts like the roller of a pen. So it's easy to work with. It's a really fun magical tool that you can really expand with. And it's especially good for things that are might sensitize your skin, something like a black pepper or a cinnamon that you don't necessarily want to get on your skin, but you still want to work with magically.
That's fantastic. I guess I never made a connection between those roller bottles and a pen, but yeah, they're like a huge marker, or a huge ballpoint, which is just a fantastic thing. So when you're talking about using those magically, you're talking about basically invisible ink. I mean, you're writing in a clear medium that probably won't appear. Which is kind of fun. Do you ever add color to it just for the fun of it?
Yes, I have. There's ones that are really available, really useful. Food coloring, especially if you're making a slightly larger batch, you can just use one drop and they last forever.
Right. That's fantastic. I now I've got something to go home and try because I know my partner's got a couple of those roller bottles just kicking around, not really doing much right now. So.
Yeah, you can write on petitions, you can write on candles, you can draw on the windows, and no one's the wiser.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate that. So do you have a favorite story to share about your love of poetry?
So I have been entranced by scent my entire life. And my very first foray, we'll say, I was probably 3 or 4 years old, probably closer to 3. And I had always gotten to sit with my aunt while she got ready for work. So applying the potions of makeup and while she had a mirrored tray that sat on her bureau. And every day she'd go and she'd pick just the right scent for her armor that day. And so everyone had such a beautiful, entrancing scent to it. I always thought like, okay, where is this going? Like, how can I make this? How can I imbue the power of this magic that she's got? So we visited my mom's friend Clara. She picked us up for the weekend. Mom always made sure to sort of split up the four of us to different places. So it's not four kids taking over your whole household, but it gives everybody an individual experience. So I was visiting Clara, and Clara went to put her perfume on, and I'm thinking, oh, now's my chance. I can figure out how to embrace this magic. I drank a bottle of very, very expensive perfume because I was convinced, like, if just a spritz, like, it smelled so good. I drank the whole bottle, and I was so sick.
Oh my goodness.
I was so sick.
It's like, I think I remember when I was super young, wow, that vanilla smells really good. I bet it's fantastic, and just a swig and whoa.
It's like the first time someone hands you a piece of chocolate. My mom was making brownies, and you're like, oh, that's chocolate. I want it.
Right.
No, you really don't.
Chocolate. Yeah.
No, you really don't.
All right, so let's see. You're kind of cooped up in the house. You're writing this new book on Blackthorn's Botanical Brews, and I mean, I like to think that any creative endeavor is a learning experience beyond just exercising writing or putting down thoughts into words. What did you learn writing the book? What do you do different around the house now that you might not have done before you wrote the book?
I had my very first formal training was in a British traditional witchcraft group, a coven. It was sort of an offshoot. And so I got really comfortable with this full, complete ritual with invocations and chants and circle casting and the whole ritual theater of it. So I like to think of ritual as this big production that takes you out of your everyday and sort of transports you to this magical place that's time outside of time and place outside of place, so that you can do this work. But writing this really reminds you that everything that you do, every little thing that you spend your time with during the day can be magical. And it's really important to remember that those magical parts of ourselves, they starve if they are neglected for too long. So doing things like preparing your food and preparing your beverages, those things can be magical. You don't have to wait for the full moon to do something magically empowering. You can blend a tea for your morning ritual. You can take a little bit of peppermint, you can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and create something that you not only did you make, and so you have that time outside of time. This is only available here because I'll never be able to recreate this if I don't write it down. You take possession of your magic in a way that it's a lot harder if you don't recognize that it's not just a time and place. It's all day, it's all places, and it's all times. So I really take to heart that even if things are a little bit wonky right this minute, my magic doesn't have to suffer. You can really take that time to connect, even if you're not necessarily getting together with your coven mates or your friends and family. You can have that magical time that's just yours.
Sure. It was interesting because when I was thinking of your book and kind of going through it and seeing how it applies in my own life, all of a sudden I realized that I take the time when my coffee's brewing in the morning to really kind of ponder my day. It becomes a meditative experience.
Absolutely.
Kind of visualizing what I'm doing, as far as just the immediate stuff. I need to clean the kitchen, I need to do this, I need to do that, today at work, I need to get this done, I need to interview Amy Blachthorn. And, all the way to, the bigger issues, what's going on, with the pandemic, what's going on in the country, what's going on in the world, even to kind of a spiritual process. When you are creating a potion, you're creating a brew, no matter what it is. I mean, it could be something mundane like my morning coffee. It could be something intentionally magical like creating a new tea and kind of imbuing it with intent to make some kind of a potion. How I guess a long way of getting around to asking, how important is it to be doing things with intent in order to make it magical? I mean, you have to express a magical intent, or is it kind of inherent in the process?
It's a little bit of both. So there's two kinds of magic that are happening here when you're talking about a magical brew. There's the inherent magical qualities of whatever you're utilizing. So if I wanted to make a peppermint tea because my chest is feeling a little phlegmy today, whatever it is, you have the inherent magical properties of mint. The other part of that is the magic that we bring to the process. So the inherent magical qualities that we're imbuing with our beverage once it's whole, once it's actually a tea. So the magic that it has is great. If I just feeling like having a cup of tea, I can have a cup of tea. It's tasty, it's fulfilling, and it warms you in a way that nothing else will. But if you are able to take the time and set your intention and put that intention into the beverage, you're imbuing it with your own magical possibilities. So we have those two halves. The peppermint has its own list of qualities, and you can find those in Blackthorne's Botanical Magic. But when you really look at how you approach it as a potion, it goes from tea to a potion when you apply that magic that lives within all of us, sort of raise it from the ground and really set it into that beverage and take it into ourselves, or serve it to our friends and loved ones because we love and we care for them and they're within our household. So it's really important that we understand that when you raise energy, when you get that skin tingling, spine tingling knowing, and you put that into your potion, your beverage, that's when it becomes from my morning tea to a potion. You want to have tea, that's great. There are all the individual qualities of the materials that go into it, but when you are able to imbue it with your intent, with your feeling, with your emotion, then it becomes a potion. So I can have a morning cup of tea and I can set my intention for a great day, or I can make it a truly magical experience. Take that deep breath and go forward with the rest of my day. Even if it's just time it takes to brew a cup of tea, that's time that you can spend on yourself, and you don't have to justify that to anybody. I can say, okay, this is time that's just for me. So you can have a cup of tea, or you can make a little bit more magical, but allowing yourself the time that it takes just to do that little magical intention is a really important fixture for our days. And a lot of times you think about what happens if you miss your morning cup of tea or your morning cup of coffee. Like the rest of the day just doesn't seem right anymore. And exactly, you feel like the rest of your day is messed up and you can't recover it. Well, this is a way to make that really resonate.
Got it. So one of the things that, as I got into all this, my history of Weiser, personal interest before that, when you see magic being done in popular culture, you see witches with a cauldron, you see, people drinking potions, if you happen to be kind of a role-playing nerd, like some of us might have been, potions are all over the place, but when I started looking into how magic is kind of performed and done in the contemporary sense, I guess I was slightly disappointed that there weren't so many potions out there. So I'm wondering, how did you stumble onto these kind of magical essences and potions as a focus of your magical practice?
It's funny when you look at the number of books that are available for practitioners out there. There's a lot, but when you sort of start looking for potions, a lot of books have zero, and if they contain them, it's usually maybe one.
Right.
Because a lot of authors are worried about, the idea of a potion is usually some chemically green, and there's a reason for that green. We'll talk about that in a second. Bubbling, oozing thing that you sort of probably smells awful and tastes even worse. And that's the idea that people have of potions. It's probably poisonous and it's going to be awful and blah, no thank you. But it's the magic that makes it a potion, right? So these ideas that people have of how to work with them. It's sort of this singular focus of magic that's way over there on the side and not really important. Well, it is. It really takes that time to change who we are as a person when you imbue it, when you take it into yourselves. I mean, the difference between poison and medicine is dose. So by controlling the dose, by controlling your exposure to it, then it's great. You can take something and you can apply it to your skin. It's still a potion. You can take your morning lotions that are created from botanical plants and write out sigils on your arms and embrace your magical armor in that way. But my magic itself really took from being a smaller child and watching my mother make tea for the whole family. Being in our particular region as a child, sweet tea was the thing. You didn't go out and buy sodas, you didn't go buy anything. It was sweet tea. But watching my mom create this potion, create this magical brew from tea leaves, it was the neatest thing to me as a child to say, okay, she took leaf and she took water and there's sugar, and now it's something that she made just for our whole family because she loves us. So it really fascinated me as a child, and I really took that into heart when I started working with both essential oils and teas themselves, understanding that each of those things has a list of magical associations. I mean, there's 350 pages plus for Blackthorne's Botanical Magic. I mean, each one of those things I could have talked about for an entire book.
Right.
So understanding the way that each of those things comes together, sort of the magical math, so to speak, the way that you can really fine tune what you're working with and how to create something that's greater than the sum of its parts. It just has always entranced me, and I hope that it always does.
Got it. So let's see. You mentioned green bubbly things, and I mean, I'm gonna flash back to my drinking days, and there's all kind of the classic liquors, which are a lot of grain based stuff, and then you start getting into botanicals with gin, but you get into liqueurs, chartreuse, believe it or not, was a favorite of mine, and you get into stuff like Pernod, some of the other botanicals, absinthe is another one. I mean, so talk to me about the green poison stuff for a minute.
It's a fantastic. So we have the green fairy, and we have this idea of green equaling poison, are sort of coming together with the pop culture idea of potions. So we have the history of absinthe. That's really funny because for 92 years here in the United States, you couldn't get real absinthe. You could get stuff called absinthe, but it really wasn't. They didn't have the Artemisia absinthium in it. You could get wormwood in it, and so it sort of tasted like absinthe, but it didn't have that magical green fairy effect.
Right.
But the biggest problem was people thought, okay, well, absinthe is poisonous. It made all these people crazy. The French artists and whatnot became into popular culture in France when there was the grape blight that destroyed all the wineries. So they said, okay, well, we can't drink wine, we'll drink absinthe. The problem was that they were brewing absinthe in lead bathtubs. It was never the absinthe that was the problem. It was the lead in the bathtub they were brewing in. So in the early 19th century, there was this really fantastic vogue of these beautiful green gowns that came into popular use. And they found out pretty quickly that the amount of material used to make these gowns green was poisonous. It was killing the women wearing the gown.
Wow.
Yes. The women wearing them so frequently, they even turned green because of the jaundice and the damage to their liver, their kidneys, and their entire system, that the women actually turned green. So the green poison, it wasn't necessarily the exterior, it wasn't the plants and the botanicals. It was the material they were using to dye these gowns green with.
Right.
I mean, the women who could not afford such gowns, they would get small brooches 2 or so inches across, made out of that material, and even that had enough of this poisonous material in it to kill probably 30 people. So there's a few of them that are still left. You have to be very careful in handling them as museum research patrons. But the gloves and respirators and little tweezers, there's a lot of protocols in place, but it's really fascinating the history of the poison green idea. And so that's something that fascinates you. I could talk about that all day, but do some research and check out the stories behind it. Just like the radium girls using the radium to illuminate the clocks, because look, it glows in the dark by itself. It's because it's radioactive. They were licking the paintbrush to get the fine point for those numerals and taking in a lot of radium.
Yeah, that's just crazy. I heard that story. I've got a hobby of watching stuff. Travel alarm clocks. So I've got travel alarm clock.
Oh.
If you look at it, you can actually see the radium burn on the clock face there. So that's something I keep whole. I don't get into that. But yeah, I can certainly understand where that kind of fear comes from. Where you don't understand why people are getting sick and dying, and you might think it's the absinthe, the active ingredient there, but instead, surprise, it's the lead bath.
Yes, I was really excited that in 2010, I was at a home show that I was actually performing a wedding at for a bride and groom. They actually had an absinthe vendor there doing tastings. They couldn't sell it, but they could offer it for free tastings because the law had just changed where absinthe was now legal. But they were sort of figuring out how to proceed with that legality. So this was the very first distillery in the United States that was allowed to make true absinthe. Vieux Carré Absinthe was actually in Philadelphia. It's the distillery is right there. So that's the one I wound up using for my not just creating the beverages for the drinks, but really doing the research and doing the experimentation with, because it had a really nice sweet tea finish to it. I had gotten some from the Czech Republic, and it comes in a great big bottle. It says therapeutic oil on the box, and you're like, okay, what did I do here? It was 185 proof.
Damn.
That will definitely put some hair on your chest. The idea of the pink elephant dreams and the green fairy that people associate with absinthe really comes from the combinations of the literal number of botanicals that's there, but also the Artemisia absinthium has that similar effect on the body. You're sort of relaxed and you're open to suggestion. So it does definitely, especially if you're ingesting this before bedtime, can color the texture of your dreams, but it's not necessarily going to make you see that green fairy.
Right. Now you get into creating infused liquors and bitters and stuff like that. When all this is over and you start having parties, are you going to be everybody's most favorite bartender?
Absolutely. My favorite part in there was helping people create their own signature cocktails. What's seasonally appropriate? What do you have available to you? What story can go with this cocktail that really makes for a good storyteller? A good bartender is a good storyteller. So you're telling your stories through those beverages, whether or not they contain alcohol or not. They each have their own texture to them. So being able to really pull that out is fabulous, because everyone is different. Every party is different. Every drink is different. Every interaction with your friends is different. So I'd be thrilled to have some people over once this is over and get to practice that hostessing that I have missed so very much. My parents growing up, always the house was always party central. The basement had a bar in it, and there was a pool table, and there's benches and speakers bigger than my toddler self. And so the idea of hosting and hostessing was sort of built into my childhood, being a good host, as well as making sure that everyone was taken care of. So I sort of miss that currently. So when I had my own home, there's a pool table in the basement and a place to gather as soon as it's safe to do so.
Right, right. So I guess when you're dealing with the practicalities of essential oils and getting essences of flavors and scents into a brew, do you find it easier to work with an alcohol-based brew where alcohol is a solvent for oils, where water and other either non-oil or non-alcohol solvents are not?
Absolutely. When coming to the ideas of sort of incorporating these as a whole and creating your own beverages out of these things, the biggest light bulb moment that I had in writing this book was that bitters were just tinctures. We're just different language for a different set of people. So creating your own bitters is the easiest thing. You can do whatever you want with it. You can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and create something that's wholly yours, but able to impart those flavors. My very first, one of my first Instagram videos was this Cardamom Blush, and it used cardamom infused Lillet Blanc. So it has it's a very light, like a wine spritzer, but cardamom really brought forth this warmth and this texture and this livelihood to this otherwise very staid beverage. It's used at weddings and served because it's got rose water in it. It's very lovely and sweet, and so it gets served at weddings. But the idea of using alcohol as a medium to express your own artistry is really fantastic as an idea. They're so easy to work with. They're easy to obtain. If you don't have Lillet Blanc that's infused with cardamom, guess what? You can put cardamom in your Lillet Blanc and let it sit for a bit. It really opens the doors, because one of the biggest problems I have is getting people to give themselves permission to play with these things. Oh, if I don't have a recipe or if I don't have a thing, well, I guess I can't do it. No, you can. Play with it. Be willing to be wrong. That willingness is the biggest part. Guess what? If it's not great, throw it out. The amount of alcohol and mixtures that goes into it is usually pretty cheap. And if it's not great, no harm, no foul. You can move on to the next thing. Right. There's so much variety that's available. The materials are so at hand. It doesn't really cost anything to be wrong with essential oils and things like that when you're working with them magically. If I'm blending 2 milliliter bottle, I feel a lot better about having to be wrong with it than if I was brewing a 10 milliliter bottle or even something larger. If I'm wrong, that's pretty expensive. But with alcohol, you can really expand and explore the materials that you're working with in a way that gives you permission to play.
Yeah, it's funny because the giving yourself permission part, a friend of mine, well, actually a former roommate and enabler, once made a cocktail out of a Trader Joe's soda. It was a seasonal soda that was a lemon cayenne soda and vodka, and he was perfectly happy with that. And Trader Joe's discontinued the soda, and he was kind of lost for a while. So he was casting around, and finally, I said, "Why don't you just make your own pepper vodka and pour it into lemonade?" And sure enough, that did the trick, But you get kind of caught up in that. I'm going to buy something off the shelf, and I want to have something that I can buy off the shelf to do something. And so often it's just something simple like infusing hot peppers in vodka to make it work. So you mentioned you're kind of a born entertainer, born and raised as an entertainer with people, and obviously as an author, you're out in the public. You've got the shop that you run, and I understand that you started doing podcasts at the beginning of all this. How did those play out?
It's actually really neat getting to really expand and explore the ideas of not just the hostessing and the hosting, but really making sure that everyone's needs are met when you come to the idea of podcasting, because every episode is its own little party. Every episode is its own entertainment So trying to figure out how to make sure that everyone gets whatever they need from that individual experience is really, not only is it's difficult, but in the good, fulfilling way that says, hey, I'm doing something that's really important to me. So the Blackthorne Grove, I started right like 5 minutes before the pandemic. It was probably the very beginning of February that I got this idea that, okay, I'm gonna do a thing. It was mostly out of the idea that I had missed blogging, but I had so little energy left for blogging after writing all day, every day. It was like I needed something else. I wanted a way to express the things that I was thinking about and feeling, but in a way that was genuinely mine, and it didn't take away from the who I needed to be to write books, because it sort of takes that energy, it takes that creative energy, and it puts it into something that takes away from your time writing. So I said, I got it. It's a podcast. I took a love sack beanbag chair that a friend of mine had told me was on sale. I love it. It's the size of a sofa.
Yeah. I've seen those.
And I crammed it into a closet in my office. The previous owners of this house put bookshelves into one closet in the whole house. I'm like, oh, it's a secret library. So I crammed this sofa-sized beanbag chair into a closet. And it makes for a nice podcast studio because the walls are closed in. It sort of muffles the sound. It doesn't carry to the rest of the house.
Right.
So
that reverb or energy, and especially with the beanbag in there, I'm sure it's kind of a nice sound.
Yes, it's nice. It's muffled. It's warm. It's cozy. And my pit bull puppy Millie thinks that I built this just for her. So it's hit or miss whether or not I go in there to record and she decides to climb in there with me. I did an episode on meditative qualities and establishing a breathwork practice because of the pandemic making people anxious. I'm like, look, chill out, go have some deep breaths and you'll be fine. So Millie actually crawled into my lap when I was recording that episode, so you can hear little pibble snores. So I told everybody, like, Millie's making her podcast debut as my backup singers here, using their breath to help people overcome their own anxieties. So yes, Millie has a podcast credit now.
Oh, fantastic! That's so great. How is that? Have you kept up the podcast? Are you still doing the podcast?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited. I just hit my 11th episode. It was a 2-hour episode on beginning a magical practice with a number of practitioners. It was organized by Mortellus, who has a book coming out in February. Do I Have to Wear Black? It's a funeral guide to for not only practitioners but for death work professionals, funeral directors, and the like. It's a really fantastic book. It's like 500 pages. It's just a giant, massive tome. But they put this together with myself, with a wide variety of practitioners. That Kentucky Witch from YouTube, another podcaster from Seeking Witchcraft, just a number of professionals all said, okay, we're going to be here for, the original intent was for witches 13 to 18, that very new, very rough individual practice, and sort of tell them the things that we wish was available when we were starting our practice. We opened it up to anyone after, so it was originally going to be on Mischief Night, since we were hoping to keep teens inside the house and from creating mischief and potentially getting sick.
Right.
So Mortellus had this really fabulous idea, but I don't know if you remember, there was a hurricane in Florida that the day before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So most of North Carolina didn't have electricity at that point because of the hurricane. So probably half of the people who were going to attend could not because there had been a hurricane. So we pushed it back to Friday the 13th in November. So it's a 2-hour episode on the podcast there, so you can listen to the things that we talked about. If you want to see the video that goes with it, Mortellus is hosting it on their website, mortellus.com, MORTELLUS. And it's a free, so you can watch the video or you can listen to it with your podcasting equipment. So it's really great. You get a huge variety of opinions, and it's not just a one-on-one interview. There's a whole panel of people you can hear their experiences and their ideas and their thoughts and feelings on things. So really fantastic. And It's actually my longest episode. Most episodes take around 45 minutes, but this 2-hour episode was really in depth, and there's a lot of great stuff that's available. I did a neat interview with Cindy Brannon. We both had our books came out at the same time, so we talked about botanical magic from two different perspectives. Her work with Hecate and my work with the brews and the potions that are available. So it's really fantastic to get both sides of that and see how they both sort of reflect and enhance each other. So that was a neat episode that's up there too.
So you have the shop, you definitely have the online presence. You are now a published author for a number of years. And I imagine that each step along the way kind of opened up your network to a lot of people. Have you found that network of people you connect with on that kind of professional and magical personal level has expanded with as you progress into more and more podcasts?
Oh yes, I'm over 200,000 as far as my social network goes right now. It's immense because every time I do an appearance, every time I do a talk with someone, it doesn't just expand the likes. The likes aren't really, you don't connect with a number, but the number of people who are willing to reach out and connect with you as a person, that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited with the way that people reflect, not just on the things that I say, but how it impacts where they are in their life right this minute. That's the connection that I'm looking for. And I'm actually, those feelings are really expanding with people giving themselves, again, permission to reach out and to feel connected to another person. It's really, especially since people went into lockdown, people are giving themselves that avenue to reach out to someone who they really enjoy their company. They enjoy what they have to say as an author. And it's really fantastic to understand that connection that people are getting because they're staying home and because they're reaching out online rather than the way they would in person if they were able to go out.
Right. So let me ask you this. You've got, again, bookstore, podcast. What is next for you?
Oh my goodness. Right now I'm working on a brand new book. I signed the contract 2 weeks ago. So I'm really excited for the next portion of my writing career. Right now, I haven't written anything pretty much since January, since the pandemic started. I've edited Botanical Brews, but I'm excited to be able to buckle down and write the next journey, which is Blackthorn's Protection Magic, a witch's guide to self-defense.
Okay. I just had to check. So that is with us. Good. Yay. Glad to hear it. Looking forward to that. So let's say we've got that planned for early 2022. And, as far as, when normal people are talking time, wow, we're not even into 2021. 2022 is way out there. In the publishing world, that's right around the corner for us. So, looking forward to that for sure. What else? One of the questions I wanted to ask you, kind of professionally, is you mentioned that you had done an Instagram live thing, and I know that the last time I did that, one of the things that kind of amused and frustrated me was the little scrolly chat things going on down in the corner where people are commenting. They're saying good things about it. They're saying all kinds of other stuff about it, but they're also asking questions. And, maybe I was getting 1 out of every 5 questions, but I know that I missed a whole slew of them. How do you deal with that on your end?
Oh my goodness. When I first started in October, I was really nervous. It's funny that after doing this, I've been public speaking and instructing for 20 years and doing interviews like this for a little bit longer than 20 years. So going through seeing those little scrolls and waves, and it was really overwhelming. So I found what I really needed to do was I'm glancing at those things that are said as I started reviewing tarot decks and leaving inspirational thoughts for the different books that I have available. Is that I really need to take 5 or 10 minutes at the very end before I'm getting ready to sign off, and really scroll back through real quick and see if those questions or thank people for commenting, really embrace that connection. But if I try and do it while I'm talking, I'll never talk. I'll never get to that point but they're really insightful questions, but it divides my attention so much that I can't do both. So I might notice a comment and make a connection there, but I really need to take a couple seconds and go through those questions and make sure that everyone gets their questions answered, and remind them that if I missed it, feel free to leave a comment, because I'll go back to those comments a lot easier than when I'm in the moment.
Right. So let's see, you're still at the same website. So you're still at Blackthorn Hoodoo Blend. You mentioned that you changed the name of the shop to Blackthorne's Botanical. So what else is new at the shop? What else are you doing at the shop?
So I completely rebranded everything. You can go to blackthornsbotanicals.com to get there. There's a redirect. God bless the internet. So it's really fabulous to be able to blend the teas and the oils, and there's a couple incenses on there that I've really taken to heart. There's a mugwort based incense. We're actually soak the mugwort in some vodka that's been imbued with vanilla. So once that evaporates, it just leaves behind that beautiful vanilla. So it almost smells like a really beautiful cologne. And I mix frankincense with it. So there's things you can only get right there on the shop. But each one of those takes a different part of my day. So when I've written until I can't write anymore and I feel like my brain is leaking out my ears, I can go and I can make a batch of candles, or I can go and really take that time with the herbs for those incenses. I'm still creating all day. I'm still doing the same work all day, but it gives me permission. There's that word again. To take a little piece and here and there, so I never get bored, because the biggest thing during this pandemic, I just there's nothing to do. I can't sit in front of the television and binge watch all day. I just can't do it. But I have 4 workstations in my office, so I can sort of hop from one place to the next while I'm going through my day. And so my scenery always changes, and that gives me the ability to really make sure that I'm wholly invested in it, but there's still change and variety in my day. So it's really helpful. If I can't run around outside, at least I can have a little change of scenery inside.
Yeah, you can run around inside the house and do different things. For sure.
Yes, Delaware has never gone to phase 3. Delaware's stayed at phase 2 for a few months now, and as of next week, we'll be back to phase 1. Making sure there's a stay-at-home order. There's you can leave to go to work at the grocery store, and that's it. So they're really making sure that everyone is understanding that this is serious. I'm really happy that my state has taken this as seriously as they have. So it makes sure that I have the ability to concentrate on my work and make sure that those things are taken care of. Because there's only so many times in a week you can go to the grocery store.
Absolutely.
So it's great to have that change of scenery.
It is. Amy, we're approaching an hour, so I'm gonna cut this off at this point. It has been so wonderful to have you on the show again. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to actually do this with us. Thank you so much. I'm going to plug your book once again. It's Blackthorne's Botanical Brews in this lovely textured cover. One thing I will note though is we had one customer return this book because you open the front cover and get past the end paper and
Is the whole book upside down?
The whole book is upside down. So
that's so neat.
The text block got bound in upside down, which is super cool, but apparently some people don't exactly appreciate it. So, Amy, again, it's just been wonderful, and I thank you for being on the Weiser Books Radio.
I love hanging out with you. I can't wait to do it for the next one.
Fantastic. You've been listening to the Weiser Books Radio. Find us online at www.weiserbooks.com or wherever you get the podcast.